The door of the Quiet Hearth opened without urgency, and then closed again just as gently. A hedge knight stood inside the threshold for a moment, letting the warmth reach him before he moved any farther. He did not look around as someone searching for danger might, but as someone taking quiet measure of a place that felt safe. The fire was low and steady, settled into embers rather than flame, and its glow touched the worn edges of his armor. He exhaled slowly, as though the road had finally allowed him to stop walking. No destination pressed at his thoughts tonight, and no memory demanded his attention. For the first time in a long while, he was not between battles, but between roads. And here, in this space, he did not need to carry them with him. The hedge knight stepped fully inside and let the door settle shut behind him without a sound. The warmth of the hearth moved toward him slowly, like something patient and familiar. He stood still long enough for the cold to loosen its hold, feeling it leave his hands and shoulders in quiet stages. The weight of his armor no longer felt like readiness, only like something that had traveled a long way with him. He adjusted the strap at his shoulder, not to tighten it, but as if acknowledging it one last time. This place did not ask him to hurry, and so he did not. The road had carried him here, and for now, that was enough. He crossed the room at an unhurried pace, boots touching the floor with careful intention. Each step sounded softer than the last, as though the inn itself was listening and approving. The fire greeted him without flare or spark, steady and contained within its stone cradle. He paused beside it, palms open to the warmth, letting it reach deeper than the surface. Metal softened in the glow, losing its edge and becoming simply something that had been worn. For a moment, he felt no need to move again. The knight seemed willing to wait with him. The keeper of stories looked up from his chair by the hearth, eyes calm and welcoming. No question was asked, and no explanation was required. The hedge knight inclined his head in quiet thanks, a gesture practiced and sincere. A bench near the fire stood empty, waiting without expectation. He moved toward it, careful not to disturb the stillness that had gathered in the room. The bench was solid and warm, more forgiving than it appeared. He sat, and the day loosened its grip just a little more. He reached for the clasp of his cloak and undid it slowly, listening to the soft sound of fabric falling free. The cloak was folded with care and set beside him, as though it too deserved rest. Without it, the air felt lighter against his shoulders. He rolled one shoulder, then the other, noticing how much they had carried. There was no rush to remove anything else. Nothing waited beyond this moment. Tonight existed only as it was. His gloves came off next, fingers stretching once before settling on his knees. The firelight revealed small marks and lines earned without complaint. He studied his hands briefly, then decided they needed no more attention. The belt at his waist was loosened with a quiet breath. Metal shifted, not falling, just relaxing into a new position. Each sound felt appropriate, belonging exactly where it was. The room accepted all of it without comment. The sword was lifted carefully, both hands steady as he carried it a short distance. He placed it near the hearth, resting it flat rather than upright. It looked different there, no longer a promise or a warning, just a tool at peace for the night. He straightened slowly, noticing how the absence of its weight changed his balance. For once, nothing pulled him forward. He remained exactly where he was. The straps of his armor were unfastened one by one, each motion deliberate and unhurried. The pieces were set down carefully, leaning against the bench and the wall. They did not clatter or complain. Without them, he felt taller and lighter at the same time. The fire reflected softly off the metal, as if tucking it in for the night. He stretched once, slowly, feeling the space around him widen. The road felt farther away now. He leaned back on the bench and allowed himself to breathe without listening for anything in particular. The inn made its own quiet sounds, all of them familiar and harmless. somewhere, wood settled and embers shifted. Nothing needed his attention. The thought came gently, without force. He did not need to be anywhere else. Not tonight. The keeper rose briefly to tend the fire, then returned to his chair without a word. The hedge knight watched the movement with calm eyes, reassured by its simplicity. Another breath left him, slower than the last. Between roads, between obligations, between thoughts, he rested. The bench supported him without effort. The fire kept its own watch, and sleep, unhurried, began to draw closer. The fire burned lower, its glow steady and untroubled by wind or draught. The hedge knight shifted slightly on the bench, adjusting not out of alertness, but comfort. His back found the support it needed without resistance. His shoulders lowered another small measure. He had grown used to sleeping lightly, but the habit felt unnecessary here. The walls held firm around him. Nothing pressed against them from the outside. He closed his eyes briefly, only to rest them, not yet to sleep. Darkness behind his lids felt warm rather than watchful. He listened once more to the room, as he had listened to forests and crossroads before. But this listening was different. There were no hidden patterns to detect, no distant hooves or rustling brush to interpret, only the quiet breath of an inn at night. His boots remained on for a moment longer, more from habit than necessity. Then, slowly, he leaned forward and loosened them. The leather eased away from his feet without protest. He set them neatly beside the bench, aligned as though they too were resting. The floor felt cool and steady beneath him, ground that did not shift, ground that did not require vigilance. A long breath moved through him, deeper than any he had taken on the road. It left without hesitation. His hands rested loosely now, no longer curled toward readiness. The small aches of travel softened at the edges. They did not vanish, but they no longer demanded attention. Even discomfort seemed content to fade quietly into the background. The night made room for all of it. The keeper turned a page in his book, the sound gentle as settling ash. The hedge knight heard it and found comfort in its ordinariness. This was not the sound of alarm. It was the sound of someone simply being present. He allowed himself another small adjustment, stretching one leg forward. The movement was slow and unguarded. No threat answered it. Outside, the world continued without him. Roads stretched through valleys and forests as they always had. Stars held their places in the sky. Villages slept or kept quiet watch of their own. None of it required his eyes tonight. The realization did not sting. It relieved. He leaned his head back against the wall behind the bench. The wood was solid and reassuring. He had rested against trees and stones before, never fully trusting them. But this wall did not sway or crack. It held steady as if it had always intended to. His breathing slowed to match the rhythm of the fire, even and unforced. Memories of the road drifted through his thoughts without urgency. Dusty paths, morning frost, the distant shape of towers seen from hillsides. They passed like clouds without anchoring him. He did not follow them. He let them move on. The bench beneath him felt less like a place to sit and more like a place to settle. He shifted once more, turning slightly onto his side. One arm rested loosely across his middle. The other lay open against the wood. His sword remained near the hearth, untouched and unnecessary. It did not call to him. It simply existed. Sleep moved closer, not as something sudden, but as something patient. His thoughts thinned like mist in early light. The warmth of the hearth wrapped around him without demand. Between roads, he had found a moment that did not ask for direction. Between burdens, he had found a space that did not require strength. He did not resist the quiet. He allowed it. The fire had settled into a deep red glow, steady and undisturbed. Its warmth no longer reached outward with strength, but rested close to the stones that held it. The Hedge Knight's breathing matched that quiet rhythm. Slow in, slow out. No part of him remained braced for interruption. Even habit had grown tired and stepped aside. His eyes did not open again. There was nothing left to check, nothing left to measure. The walls of the inn stood as they always had, thick and certain. The keeper's presence lingered like a calm current in still water. No words were needed to confirm safety. It simply existed, and he accepted it. The weight he had carried across valleys and through seasons lay beside him now. Cloak folded, armor leaning, boots aligned, sword resting flat by the hearth. Each object had found its place for the night, and so had he. His shoulders sank another small measure, though he did not notice the change. The lines at his brow softened. Even the quiet strength in his jaw released its hold. He no longer listened for distant movement. He no longer calculated exits or shadows. The night required none of that. It required only stillness. Outside, the stars continued their patient watch. They did not dim or brighten for him. They simply held their light. The roads beneath them stretched in all directions, untroubled by whether he walked them, unchanged by whether he paused. They would remain when morning came. Within the inn, embers shifted softly, a quiet, settling sound. It was not a call to wake. It was not a warning. It was simply the fire becoming smaller, more at ease. The Hedge Knight's breath deepened in response, long and unforced, the kind of breath that belongs to someone unguarded. If dreams began, they began without urgency, not of battle or banners, not of crossroads or storms, but of warmth, of steady ground beneath open hands, of walls that did not need defending, of rest that did not need earning. The keeper glanced once toward the bench, seeing the night settled there. He offered no interruption, no adjustment. The fire required little tending now. The room required nothing at all. Everything had found its place. Everything had quieted. The unnamed Hedge Knight slept without listening, without reaching, without bracing. Between roads, he had allowed himself to stop. Between burdens, he had allowed himself to set them down. The world continued without complaint, and he rested within it. The fire held its last gentle glow before surrendering to embers. The inn remained steady in the night. The keeper turned one final page before closing his book. No footsteps disturbed the quiet. No wind pressed against the door. Nothing needed the Hedge Knight until morning, and so in the space between roads, he slept. If you find yourself not quite ready to leave the fire, there is another tale waiting for you. It rests just nearby, quiet and unhurried. You may click it now and let the story carry you a little further into rest.